This ZeroNow program is brought to you with the support of our founding partners.
So let's welcome our guest panelists here. First, Randy Braverman. Randy has been very involved with NC. In fact, all three of you are very involved with NCSSD. But Randy, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and your background.
Sure. So I have 42 years of experience. I was a police officer, school security director, consultant. I work now for a regional office education in West 40, and I'm the school safety and threat assessment specialist. I'm on the Homeland Security Prevention Committee and also on the FBI threat.
Awesome. Thank you, Randy. I'm not sure if was it cutting out just for me or did Randy cut out for you as well, Danielle?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Okay, we can hear you now. Yes, it was
Oh, sorry
like
about that.
oh, well, I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be okay. But thank you, Randy. We're glad that you're able to join us. Danielle Stevens, also former law enforcement, I do believe. Danielle Stevens is Safety and Security Director at Lake Zurich Unified School District. So, Danielle, would you mind just introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me today. I'm honored to be here with Randy and Solveig. I am the Director of Safety and Security for Lake Zurich School District. I am part of the ZeroNow Board of Directors and I was part of the founding leadership for the National Council of School Safety Directors. I also serve on the NCS4 Interscholastic Advisory Committee and very proud to be the National K-12 Safety Director of the Year for Campus Safety Magazine, the first woman to achieve this honor. And as you all know, I am a national keynote and presenter on school safety.
Awesome, Danielle. We're so glad that you're here with us. It's been a yeah, it's been you've been very involved with Zero Now and NC16, so I always appreciate everything that you do and keeping our students safe. And Solveig Jermu, welcome, Solveig. So Solveig is also in the Chicagoland area with North Shore School District. So Solveig, would you mind just introducing yourself, please?
Sure. First, thank you for having me today. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm Solveig Jermu. I am the Director of Safety Security for North Shore School District 112, finishing my third year in this role. Prior to joining the district, I spent 25 years in law enforcement with the suburban Chicago Police Department and retiring as the rank of sergeant. During my career, I've worked with schools, supervised safety initiatives, and developed strong partnerships between educators and law enforcement and first responders. In my current role, I oversee emergency preparedness, security operations, and school safety programs across the district. I'm looking forward to sharing some of the lessons I've learned about securing summer school programs while maintaining a safe and welcoming environment for students and staff.
Awesome. And Solveig, did where are you with your summer school year? Is it have you wrapped up yet, or is it still mid-season?
No, we just started summer school, and we also do have summer programs happening in all of our school buildings.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. Okay. So Danielle, so obviously getting ahead of things, when should we start planning summer school and summer school programs? Is it best to start a couple weeks beforehand, or what do you recommend?
So we're actually concluding our first summer semester this year. So when I think about planning for summer school, I'm actually starting to take notes of things that are coming up through summer school, some of the planning stages that could be improved or enhanced. So when we think about our overall safety program, and you think about that hot wash or debrief, I'm working on that now. So my planning really is starting for next year. The core planning, though, should take place a minimum of 12 weeks beforehand. So those would be some of the early planning. And we all know that our strongest partnerships are built before something happens. So we want to make sure that we're engaging all of our stakeholders and, we're thinking through some of those core pieces of where is it being held, what staff are involved, what are our transportation needs. And then we would move to more of that operational with our equipment and our radios and some of those foundational pieces. But also we need to think through, like, for example, some of our school sites are reunification sites for our village parks and rec department. So we really have to be engaging all of our partners and thinking through how are our facilities used in the summer? If we're hosting summer school at a certain site, are we engaging those partners and making sure that we're supporting their plans and the preparation that they've done in advance while the summer school is happening in our buildings?
So, how is summer school different than your regular school year? What are the differences?
Well, the procedures and the protocols really may look very different between summer school and summer programs versus the school year. And summer school is really normally led by our district employees, whereas summer programming is normally when outside organizations, such as like a park district, may rent our buildings for camps and other activities. Either way, it's really about people rather than the buildings itself, reviewing emergency response procedures, visitor management procedures, access control, student accountability, medical emergencies, and those things. And summer operations should have the same safety expectations as the regular school year.
Randy, please.
Yeah, some of the things that for the summer school, especially if you mentioned park districts, one of the things we did in my districts is that we made sure we trained our park districts on emergency plans. We actually had people who were working as park district come in and I personally trained them and had training videos for them so they knew exactly how to do the same stuff that our school does and our staff does. So that's important. And any outside agencies also. We demanded that if we contract our buildings, that someone has to pay for security to be in there, and making sure that someone's there with them to make sure that they actually run an emergency properly if they're using our buildings.
Well, I recall, as a youth, we had the local schools had it was like a park and rec program, but it was held at schools where you had like a red box with kickballs and wiffle balls and all that fun stuff. How do you secure those outdoor areas? Like Danielle, at your school, do you have outdoor activities during the summer? Or is it all academic and indoors?
We do have different camps and programs that go on. Some are school led, some are through rentals. During the school year, especially, we have partnerships with like our local YMCA who will run a before or after care program. So, as Randy alluded to, when you have those contracts and the MOUs in place, they have to know what your emergency response protocols are. They have to follow the same type of crisis response plans and have the same visitor volunteer type expectations that you have in place for your regular school day. And they have to follow the same building safety and overall operational expectations. So there is an additional layer that has to be thought out. And you have to make sure that if they have changeover in staff or management, that it's being consistently followed.
So on that, Randy, yeah, please continue on that thought.
Yeah, the one big issue that I always had, and I'm sure they had it too, is that we had construction in the summer all the time. And those construction workers have a lot of issues by leaving the doors open, not following the rules, smoking, whatever, letting people in. We made sure that any construction person that's going to work in our building, we had a emergency meeting a week before. Every person's going to work in there throughout the summer and gave them our guidelines and gave them our rules and explained to them that we're going to have drills during the summer, but you'll be honoring the drills. So if we evacuate, you will evacuate. If we're locking down, you will lock down. So they understand all the procedures, what we're doing as a construction worker, because you could have the great policies and procedures, but they got to prop the door open to go to the parking lot to get equipment. And now they just ruined your whole procedures. So it's important to work with your construction people and your building and grounds people.
And that is the ultimate recurring theme too, Randy, because you have all the best technology in the world, but all it takes is a prop door that completely negates all of your physical security infrastructure. That reminded me that's a great point though about the construction over the summer. I know when I was in college, worked as a summer janitor at the high school and middle school, cleaning the desks and all that. So how do you, Sylvia, you're at school, do you have summer help like that, temporary workers during the summer to whether it's construction, cleaning the desks, waxing the floors that may not be part of your staff during the regular school year?
Well, we currently have two schools that are undergoing construction, and one building is completely shut down, or actually, I should say two. And we have moved those kiddos to what we call a swing site. But, the planning of summer school and any summer program in those buildings, and when we're having our third-party vendors come in to do service, whether it's construction or updating on technology or whatever it may be, it's communication. It's who's in the building and knowing when they're in the building. We always try to have, if we're going to have major work done, that work is being done outside of our summer programs, so that there's no interference. Access control is huge. We just don't give a swipe card for a school building and allow access to all spaces. It depends on the work that needs to be done. And, having those meetings and those conversations beforehand is important so that those contractors could have appropriate access for sure.
And Randy, you kind of touched upon this with some of the commonly overlooked vulnerabilities with security that are unique to summer school and programs. What are some other ones other than propping the doors open, contract workers, or anything else that's unique to the summer that you don't experience during the regular school year?
Yes. So you have a lot of parents who are be new because you might have kids that don't even go to your district for summer school or new kids coming in. So you have to work with your parents to determine, what they understand in policy and procedure for emergencies. Training video for parents, they're supposed to do their guidelines for how to use it. Reunification, like Danielle said it earlier, some of our reunifications in the summer might not be the same because of their construction in their buildings or other things going on. So you got to make sure you're prepared for that. And also making sure they're prepared for, a lot of times the teachers are not the same teachers. Sometimes they're different teachers from different districts. And we want to make sure that we meet with them to go over all our policies and procedures, making sure they understand what our guidelines are and what our policies and procedures are to work with them. Because so there is a lot of different avenues, look at to make sure that you're prepared for emergencies, because summer school is totally different than regular school. And it's important that Daniel mentioned this earlier about preparing, is that I used to do surveys and debriefings in the summer school and then after summer school, see how it went, to change my procedures and things that maybe could be better for next year. So even like at the end of summer, preparing for next year, because you're talking to people and working with people to determine that. And so my big thing is I made training videos for everything, training videos for the teacher, staff, for the kids, for construction workers. That was a lot easier to do that beforehand, working with them, so they understand our policies and procedures.
I think this is a great question that is brought up. So when we think about the maintenance workers, something else to think about is we often plan all of our work with maintenance and vendors over the summer. So Solveig spoke to how we really need to schedule things outside of when the kids are in the building, especially when you're doing work on your fire panel system or any kind of emergency notification system that might announce lockdowns or different emergency response protocols. Because there are often accidental false activations during that maintenance work that can be very disruptive to the school environment and disrupt the emotional and psychological safety piece that we work so hard on, throughout the whole school year. So that's something to think about is, collaborating with your technology services and facilities to make sure that that work's not happening during the school day. The other piece to think about is, when the founding leadership came together and we put together the fossil course, one of the things we talked about in the first module is, really having that overarching view as the safety and security director of what's happening in the district, because so many different things that happen touch safety and security, but they don't necessarily fall under our department. So one of those big pieces is actually transportation. And during the summer, oftentimes the transportation routes change, which means the bus stops change. And there could be different things that come up with the bus stops as far as, how stormwater drains on the street or where puddles are forming, or if a student has to cross the street and it's near a busy intersection. So really just having the thoughtfulness of having that high level view of everything that's happening with all the different departments and how you could facilitate as a safety and security director to make sure that everyone's brought in on the conversation and we're thinking through all those different pieces.
Randy.
And the other thing you have to worry about is your tip lines and for behavioral threat assessment. Like a lot of these people are going to need teachers, and they might know what the guidelines are, where's their tip line, how to report things, and even new kids coming in. So it's important to get that message out quick the first day or two to get out information, how you put your tip lines together, how you get information, because we want those kids to understand that it's important to give us information. So whatever those new kids are or new teachers, making sure those guidelines are following so we can get information they feel comfortable reporting.
Solveig.
I wanted to add here that, I love bridging law enforcement and educators, schools. And so when the regular school year is going to end, I push out communication to our police and fire departments to let them know, hey, this is the last day of school, and I want to make you aware that we are going to be holding summer school at these buildings, and we will be having summer programming in these buildings. I always assumed when I was in law enforcement that school year ended and buildings were empty. So with that, I love to just communicate that to our first responders so that they know if they're responding to any of our buildings, there are programming and summer school happening.
What's interesting? I just recalled, one of the unique things about summer school programs. One of our members mentioned one point in time that HVAC systems can be a vulnerability. If you don't have an air conditioning system, you're apt to prop open the doors and let the cool air. And so something to think about, depending on what climate you are. I know in the schools in Buffalo where I attended, none of the schools had air conditioning. There was only the executive offices. I think the principal's office had air conditioning. But interesting. So just want to remind everyone we're approaching the halfway point. So if you have questions for Danielle, Randy, or Solveig, please hit the Q&A button and type that in. We'll get to those as we approach this. Let's see here. Let's take a couple questions from our registrants here. And either one of you feel free to take this here. What are some tips to keep and retain summer employees? And I would say tips to keep and not only retain, but also train summer employees. How do you train them? I know, Randy, you mentioned making videos. I mean, what is the best way to train and make sure that there's an understanding if you're only there for a few weeks?
Yeah, so one was training videos, but the other thing is we made them come in early, a few days earlier, to train them on all different things, not just because of emergency preparedness, but just our school building. Some of them don't even know, if they're not from our school, what our building looks like or where their classes are. So we made sure that we walked them through our buildings, making sure they know exactly where everything's at, where our offices are to report to, where our gyms are, wherever case may be, where the outside eating area, if we're going to have outside eating, but mainly too, just to make sure they understand our procedures and plans, our emergency exits, all that stuff is making sure that we came in earlier and working with them, because that's important, because we try to retain our summer school staff, but it's not always the case, because you might have some other people from other buildings. I worked for a building district that had 23 buildings, and not everybody came to every building. So some of those people that are from our district didn't know the other buildings. So it's important to obviously work with them ahead of time and make sure that make sure they're answering the concerns and let them know who they could contact.
Solveig.
So I'm going to pretty much echo the same thing as Randy. We have two summer schools happening in our one building, an elementary school building. One summer school is our own district summer school, and another one is another school district that is using our building. I did a safety orientation with them because what I wanted them to know is the layout of the building, where their access cards work, where they don't work, where our shelter locations are, where our, the primary and secondary evacuation routes are for each space that they're utilizing, where the AEDs are at. We have multiple AEDs in our building. I want them to know exactly the closest one to the spaces that they're utilizing. And also emergency response. We use the standard response protocol in our district. The other school district coming in and using ours does not. So I provided standard response protocol training for their staff, because our front office staff that is working as a North Shore School District 112 administrative assistant, they're going to use SRP protocol, and I want the people in that building to know exactly what that means, and then pushing forward age appropriate training for the students. Most of them are, in the building are 112 kiddos, but a lot of them are not. So I want to make sure that they know what to do, and when they hear the emergency action, they are going to know what to do as well.
Danielle.
I would agree from a safety lens, onboarding, clear expectations, staff want to feel safe and supported. And part of that onboarding has to include a safety presentation with the expectations that are going to take place for staff, the walkthrough, but also then extending that to students in the building. So during summer school, we do a fire evacuation drill, and then we walk through with the students the actions that they would take with like a lockdown or a self-evacuation or a shelter. And then we also reinforce the things that we teach parents and other stakeholder groups throughout the year with our overall safety program.
Randy.
I just want to add one thing. 'Cause I had an incident that we had a threat at our high school. A person said he was going to kill a bunch of people at our school. And we had a lot of camps outside. And those people are all little kids. This is a high school. And the parents are little kids' parents and get all worried. And we ought to make sure that we have a good communication with them for camps, because it's not like having a school in their school. They're all outside, and making sure that we understand what those camps are supposed to do with our teachers and staff, and making sure we reach those parents of those kids to make sure they understand where to go, and making sure we have people there to help them out. It was chaotic, but we had a plan ahead of time, and it worked out well. And our parents of those camps really appreciate it, because they don't associate with us at a high school in some of those elementary districts.
So Randy, how did you communicate with the parents? I know, like, with technology, there's mass notification systems, text and email and voice. There's obviously email, but how do you communicate?
Well, we communicate with mass notification, emails, texting, because we have their information. They have to register. So we put all that in our system. Also, we had people out there making sure the kids got inside, because we had enough time. They give us actually enough time to get people inside, and making sure those parents went 3 blocks away to a park district, which we had people there from counselors there working with those parents to calm them down and understand that they are safe. And we had to cancel part of our summer school the rest of the day. So you have so many factors to make sure that communication is a key factor, that we're working together and everybody understands how to handle it, and making sure the administrators are working well together, because you have all avenues besides just a summer school.
Danielle, please. Thanks, Randy.
For entities that are run outside of the school, we require to have multiple points of contact and for them to retain an emergency contact list. So essentially, we would push out the message to the head of whatever the camp or outside agency is. For example, like ACT prep tests that occur on campus, that's run through an outside agency. And then they push out that information to all the parents and recipients that are on our campus.
I mean, have either of you had, Randy, you mentioned an incident, but have either of you had a substantial emergency during summer school in your careers? Randy?
I did. I had to tackle a kid who was going to shoot another kid in 2005. And we had a lockdown, obviously, and we had every media response there. And so we made sure that we locked down and we had the police there. We searched the whole building, and took care of the kid, arrested the kid. We searched the whole building because we thought maybe there'd be other weapons, which we did find other weapons at that point in 2005. And then we had meetings with all the parents and let them know exactly what we did, meetings with the teachers. And then we spoke to the media what was going on. So just because it's summer school doesn't mean you're not going to have major emergencies also during this, like the school year possibly. So, and some of the kids had buildings from high school or K through 12. Some of the kids that are coming in, you might not know their background, to be honest with you, because it might not be all your kids. Like all three of us said, it could be new kids coming in or kids that want to use your building for summer school. So you really don't know some of those kids. And so you're not sure what's going to happen to some of those kids. So it's important to understand that everybody still has the same procedures.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. On those procedures, Solveig, I mean, do you run through drills? You mentioned SRP and the same drills and training that you would do with staff and students that you would during the regular school year, or is it an abbreviated version? Or how do you handle that?
It's a great question. I would love to say that we do drills for all of our summer programming. We are inching towards that. It is one of those things where, because we have different entities coming in and not everyone using the same response protocols. The biggest thing is training staff on, where to go if they're to evacuate and what to do if they needed to shelter. We have Blue Point in our buildings. If that, we had an active threat and Blue Point was pulled, what are the expectations? Really empowering the staff and the students to react based on the information that they know and where they're at in the building when that happens. So it, is really much me presenting to them in a training format. And I would love to be able to do some drills, but it's these other entities that are coming in and requiring them to do it, is a little bit different. So we're inching towards that way, but we did not do that this summer.
What about you, Randy?
So we did regular drills, but before we did the regular drills for lockdown, like Danielle said, we walked through, but we also did a drill called Stop and Think. And I think everybody could do this, no matter if it's summer school or school year. It takes 10 seconds wherever you're at, walking around the building. You do that all week. Okay. You stop and think, okay, where's my nearest lockdown? Where's my nearest evacuation? And my primary and secondary. And that's all you're thinking about. And you talk to kids about thinking about that also. And this way, no matter where they're at in the building, they know exactly where to lock down and where to evacuate. And it's an easy drill. They don't have to do it online on the PA system. They could do it themselves, but you can use a PA system for a 10-second drill. The other thing is you must test all your communications because you want to make sure it works even this summer. So we made sure we tested our PA system throughout every classroom, especially in summer school at the beginning, to make sure that works, because we found sometimes they can't hear the PA or maybe our panic buttons are not working. So we wanted to test everything during summer school, just like we did.
Danielle.
I love that Randy brought up stop and think drills. I think, as we as safety directors think about culture and climate, and also drawing you back to that fossil course if you haven't taken it, there's a whole section on culture and climate. And this is a way that you could really build up that aspect of your safety program. So here in Lake Zurich, we do something called What If Wednesdays. And it's a single question scenario designed to spark critical thinking about a safety scenario. So every Wednesday, I send out the question to all staff, which does include any of the vendors that we contract with, substitute teachers we include, and we just want them thinking about safety all the time and, helping set expectations, letting them know that we have a safe environment, it's supported, but it also serves as a training piece. And that ties into taking that information and sharing it with our principals. So if we find that, we're sharing information about one of the 5 actions of our standard response protocol, and staff, confuse a secure and a hold, we might spend the first couple minutes of a staff meeting talking about the difference between a secure and a hold. So it becomes a valuable training piece for us as well.
You know what, Danielle, you just got yourself a request to write an article for the brand new school security leadership online publication about what if Wednesdays. And I love that's a great concept. But that's part of building safety as part of your culture in a school is to start thinking about all those different types of scenarios. So that is fantastic. We got a question that came in here from Dennis Russo, from our illustrious NCSSD administrator. So this is a great question here. So during the regular school year, there is a clear leadership hierarchy who is in charge of the building. During the summer, is there different hierarchies with camps and programs? How do you communicate that hierarchy, that chain of command, if you will, Randy?
Yeah, so in our schools, we actually had the deans lead summer school, so it changed from the principal to the dean, and the deans were all in charge. There was three of them, and we made sure everybody knew who was in charge of our summer school, which was the deans of students. And then we met with all the different camps leaders and all the different summer programs to understand that these people are going to help lead an emergency, and we worked together with those deans to work together, because normally the dean wasn't the leader at our school, is obviously the principal of the school, and it's changed. So sometimes that can happen, or sometimes to be the same leader, but we made sure that communication was a key factor, who's leading our summer school. And one year we did have a person who was not even from our school leading it, and that was a lot of work because they.
Sully, what about in North Shore? How do you have that hierarchy or chain of command structured?
In the buildings that have summer school, we do have an administrator, district administrator that it needs to be in the building. And if they need to be gone, they need to find a replacement, and it needs to be a district administrator. And everyone that's using that building, all the staff, whether it's our own summer school or the summer school from the other school district, they know who to go to. Should there be an emergency. And so I think it's really important that you have that hierarchy, and people need to know who's the person in charge. As I have seen when I first came into the district, when there was a summer school, I remember walking in the building and there was no administrator. They had an incident happening, nothing major. A child was attempting to elope out of the building, meaning running away from the building. And nobody knew who was in charge. And then ultimately what happened is the front office staff became the person in charge, since they were able to call the police to request assistance and maybe. So definitely having that hierarchy and knowing who's in charge, and also other emergency contacts, such as your director of operations and facilities. If you have something structural, or you have a water issue or a flooding issue, knowing who to call for those type of situations, you definitely need to have that in place.
Randy, what about in your school district?
Yeah. The other thing that everybody has to be trained is the instant command system, making sure that they're trained on ICS 100, 700, because your summer school command staff might be different, like you said earlier. And so we ensure that everybody has a backup to backup. And so this way was clear leadership. Like I said, we changed leadership from principal to dean, but all those people that we have were leaders in our buildings were trained
on. Danielle.
I was going to share something similar to Randy. And this ties into the first question you asked about planning. And when you're thinking about that structure of not only who's in charge internally in the building, but you also have to think about the transportation piece. So, for example, we have a procedure where if there's a bus crash, the transportation director or designee are required to go to the scene. So if the transportation director's on vacation, who are the backups and who would be responding and fulfilling those different roles. For reunification, we have people who would serve as either the reunification incident commander or branch manager, depending on the type of incident that prompts a reunification. Who are those people who would be responding for the setup and be in charge of reunification? So there's many different layers to that whole planning piece during the summer. And I definitely think, our superintendent keeps a calendar of all her admin team during the summer so we could see exactly who's in and who's out. So we're thinking through as we look ahead, if we need to put a different structure in place, to Randy's point, keeping that ICS and having, the primary, the backup, and so on.
So they, given the fact that summer programs typically run with fewer staff and resources and, fewer eyes in the building, do you change anything about your security posture when you're going into summer school mode? How do you handle the decrease in staff and support?
I think this is a great question. Our summer school just through our district is very small. And the other district that is utilizing one of our buildings is actually quite large. So, the shortened hours, I think it's one of those things where I know for myself, I love to, make sure that I'm getting into that building on a regular basis, and I'm doing the checks of what is the condition of our perimeter doors? What are the staff that are normally not in our buildings? What is their behavior? I want to make sure that they're, following our security procedures and expectations and making sure that they're not taking shortcuts because really one of the vulnerabilities is this is not their normal school building. And so, to have a staff who views maybe convenience over priority, or as a priority over security, to me is I want to make sure that that's not happening. So me coming in and checking and making sure that perimeter doors are not being propped open, making sure that, when I see that there's an issue, that I am chatting with those staff members and giving them the reason why. I feel like people need to hear the reason why to things, like not me just saying, don't prop that door. I need you to not prop that door, and this is the reason why. I think when they hear that, it does help. So reduced staff doesn't really have much of an effect on us because they're staffing that summer school program based on the number of students or children that are registered for that summer school. The fewer eyes on the building, I mean, they still have an administrator, they still have me walking around, and they have director of operations that's always routinely visiting. So I don't think that there's much of an issue for that respect on our end.
Awesome.
You know,
Randy.
Yeah, we had some big issues because we had a lot of camps at nighttime. We had basketball camps, we had wrestling camps, and summer school's over at that point. But you still have to concern about how the people roaming your building. So we made sure we had to shut our building down, some of the parts of our building, so they can't get into certain areas because they're not near the gym areas. And so we went to make sure we had people centrally located so they cannot get into the rest of their buildings, and making sure they only go to those camp areas. So this way, at nighttime, they're not doing things that could cause us an issue in our school building. Like, unfortunately, many years ago, I had a kid who was sexually assaulted in a stairwell who was not covered because of the camps. So you got to make sure you're prepared for those issues too, to making sure that you might get a lot of camps until 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, no doubt, Randy. We have a question that came in. Reminder, we have about 10 minutes left before we start writing it down. But if you have a question for Randy or Solveig or Danielle, please enter in the Q&A. Robert did, and Robert asks, one of the ladies on this call mentioned walking through the lockdown drills. Can you elaborate on how you do this? How do you walk through lockdown drills? And you practice actual lockdown drills, physically run through that. So who wants to take that? I can't remember who mentioned walking through the lock. Danielle, please.
I think I had mentioned it. So this is just something we do with our summer programming, and it's basically talking to students about, in the event of a lockdown, this is what you'll hear, this is what you might see, this is what you might feel. And then we show them the spaces in the classroom that we would go in the event of a lockdown. We would show them, where we would self-evacuate should the situation call for that. And then the nearest exit doors to the classroom location. And then kind of walk through the path and then keep moving on to where we might shelter for severe weather, for example, for a tornado. So it's as simple as just talking through it, but then also as part of a trauma-informed approach, allowing them to ask questions about, what might happen or what they might do. And that's an important piece to any safety drill, is allowing students to ask questions.
Randy, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, we did the same thing, but the third day we did actually a lockdown drill. So we walked through everything, showed them exactly where everything on. And that first week we did an evacuation drill, a shelter drill, and a lockdown drill after walking through all that stuff. So this way they learned what to do. And also we had training videos to show the students what to do.
And Sylvia, did you have an additional thought on that?
Yeah, so I love empowering the staff and the students. Danielle touched on the self-evacuation. A lot of times I get the question, where do I go? Where am I going? And so we have dedicated rally points assigned to all of our buildings and making sure that students and staff know how to get there. And with some locations, it's really, very difficult to find a sheltered location if you're in the middle of a business district. And to me, my communication is we want you to get somewhere safe. And that may be a business, that may be the library, that may be another school building. But really talking through where these kiddos and staff members would go. So rally points are part of the discussion on our end.
No, that's great, Solveig. We have another question from a registrant, and we've had this question come in from in different conversations because it goes back to the cultural aspect. So, how best to deal with staff who view convenience as a priority over security when your campus is most exposed, especially during the summer? Solveig, do you want to take that one?
I'd love to. This is probably one of the biggest challenges in school safety. Most security vulnerabilities are not really caused by bad people. They're caused by good people that are taking shortcuts. Propping open doors, sharing access cards, I've seen that. Bypassing visitor procedures, so like tailgating in behind somebody else or not signing in under the tab that they're supposed to. They're really just trying to make their day a little bit easier instead of, doing what they should be doing. And I found that compliance improves when staff and visitors, they understand the why behind a security measure. Instead of, like I said before, like don't prop that door open, explaining that a locked perimeter is one of the most effective layers of protection for our buildings. So every security procedure that we have exists because an incident somewhere demonstrated the need for it. So I really like to just really give the reason why we are doing things, and I think that goes a long way.
Always start with why, Solveig. Randy.
A couple of things. First of all, we had security systems that would help us to see if the doors are propped open. I had a system that was tied to the camera system, to the door system, and would give our security people, administrators, uh, a edge saying that it was propped open in a matter of so many seconds and would get a message right away and we'd send somebody there. But what I did was positive reinforcement. So what we did is because everybody says, oh, you can't be doing candy. So when I see people closing the doors and locking doors, I would give a piece of candy out to the teachers and say, thanks for helping out for the security part, because everybody's part of security. So I appreciate you helping out. So this way, it's more of a positive thing than a negative thing. And people like that. But we would obviously have to tell the people that are doing something, obviously they're doing something that we have to change it. But then again, when you see them doing that, give them a positive reinforcement saying thank you and give them something.
Think giving the positive reinforcement with candy would be very effective in my wife's high school. That's a great approach, Randy. Danielle, what about your school district?
I'll just add to this that modeling is really important also, and this goes from the superintendent down to all of cabinet level, district administration, building administration. If you have an expectation that your staff, students, parents, and stakeholders are going to do something, you have to be doing that as well and model that behavior. And it could be something as simple as, wearing your district issued lanyard and ID badge every day. So that's one piece. And then the other thing is, some of the the safety features we talked about, like making sure exterior doors are not propped and closed and secure, are very manageable. But as you look to institute other safety and security systems and kind of layer in technology, you have to be thinking about, is this manageable? How does this fit into the person's workday? And not implementing things that aren't going to be followed up on or checked on or managed properly. So that's actually a whole nother topic. But I just want people thinking about that, as far as the overall, when we talk about culture and climate and evaluating, systems and convenience over safety, but also thinking about how does technology fit into your overall safety and security ecosystem and how is that managed?
Thank you, Danielle. And just to wrap up that specific topic of culture, I just want to remind folks, so ZeroNow just released a position paper on the foundational school safety culture. It's a position paper. It's on the zeronow.org website. If you want to check that out, it's a one pager. This is just like a quick digest though, but if you're concerned about, dealing with staff who view convenience as a priority over safety, I think that's probably a good starting point. And Randy and Solveig and Danielle had some great insights on that. Danielle, to your point, so what role does technology have to support? Because we always view, I mean, the whole, the philosophy of Zero Now is that technology or tools support humans, right? To give humans exponential powers that you can't have otherwise, being able to monitor thousands of cameras, being able to notify, like Randy, your mass notification, notify thousands of people in a second. So Danielle, how do you apply technology? How does technology support your efforts to secure your school district during summer school?
Well, the first thing I want to stress is that, technology can't replace people in all aspects, and there still has to be a focus on people and training. So that's really important to stress. But technology can support and assist in your overall safety and security operations. So Randy brought up the door alarms. Those are great. It really helps with, especially when you think about the door checks that we talked about. So for example, if you have security that check the doors every hour, every 2 hours, and you get an alert in between that time, that helps you focus on one specific area. But I spoke a little bit to, making things manageable. So when we initially rolled out, the door alert, especially at the high school where, we were really trying to target students from using unauthorized doors for exiting, we focused on the key doors that the students were using and focused on responding to the alerts at those doors before we added it to every single door in the high school where we have 31 doors, because we wanted to make it manageable, make sure that we weren't overloading our staff. And we also didn't want to get to a point where there were door alarms going off and we weren't addressing them. So those are just some things to think about, as you're layering in technology.
Randy, what about you?
The other thing is, Daniel puts good comments about technology, is that I think you need to do is this. When you want to buy a product, do not buy it. Test in your building. A lot of times those systems might not work in your building. And if they really want you to buy it, the vendors, they're going to let you test the system. So the cameras, whatever you're buying, I never bought anything unless I tested to make sure it worked in my system of my body, and they're all tied together. I try to integrate everything I can bestly to my programs, because if you have all these different things going on and you have to keep looking at other different things that are not integrated, it's going to be harder, like Danielle, to manage. So you want to test things in your building. You want to make sure it's integrated and making sure those are the right products for your building. Because people I've seen buying products and it didn't work in your building because of the type of building you have, and then it's a waste of money. So people just want to hear things, and the vendors want to sell it to them without checking to make sure it fits.
And Randy, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that isn't, that's certainly an issue, like sole source contracts for specific products. But what about the local school district and the local control and being able to determine, well, this technology works with my existing infrastructure, but I'm required to buy this specific brand of technology. And that is so critical to have local control based on your specific needs, based on your district needs, based on what you already have as far as infrastructure. That is absolutely critical. And I'm glad that you brought that up. And we're pretty much out of time, but there's one last question. Normally we ask our panelists to leave some final thoughts, but Amanda asked a great question here, and to wrap up this season of conversations, would love to hear from each of you, and we'll start with Solveig with you first. Why do you work in this industry of school safety and security? So let's hear you mentioned why a few times today. I'm glad that you did. And this is such an important thing. And I know what's amazing with the ZeroNow folks and NCSSD folks, everybody here is just passionate about school safety and security, but would love to hear each of your whys. So Solveig, please.
So my why is with my 25 years in law enforcement. Part of my role was I was in charge of our investigations unit, and I oversaw the school resource officer program. That is really when I became more involved in the schools in the area that I worked in. And I just felt like most school districts don't have the luxury to have a person, a director of safety security or a coordinator or a manager, that really their lens is everything school safety and security. Prior to me coming into my role in the school districts, safety security was overseen by like 5 different people, whether it was student services, operations, facilities, technology. And so my why was to really come in with my 25 years of law enforcement experience and to try to provide that lens, that law enforcement lens, and ensure that school safety security was a priority and for the school districts, and that I could make an impact to ensure that really that at the end of the day, the reason why, the kids are in school to learn. And so I want to be that person to be able to help that happen and make an impact in that arena.
And thank you for doing that, Solveig. And what is unfortunate, I've seen some reports recently where school districts are cutting back on the dedicated safety director role, and that's going in the opposite direction. I mean, you really need to have someone that has the background, insights, perspectives, that know how to utilize. We talk about technology, we talk about programs, the SRP, that know how best to lead a school district through that path to safer schools, if you will. So we need more safety directors, not fewer. So thank you. Randy, what is your why? Why are you involved in school safety and security?
So I always wanted to be a police officer. I knew that when I was growing up, but really a key factor in my school, my baseball coach was the director of security, and we had a great relationship. And I saw what he did and reached out to kids and helped kids. My dad died when I was a senior in high school, and he reached out to me, drive me every day to school for baseball and the schools and he knew I needed help. And I said, that guy really cares about kids. And I wanted to make sure at one point I got into the schools as a director because I cared about kids and to make a difference. And that was my why, because it's someone I saw that was a good person doing that job. And I wanted to make sure this same thing, that we cared about kids. And now working with 52 districts and 200 schools, I have a lot more touch than just being in one district. So I really enjoy what I'm doing.
And that's fantastic. And thank you for what you're doing, Randy. And Danielle, would love to hear your why. How did you enter this position?
Well, my why is also the kids, but when this job posted, my husband saw the job posting, and he said, I was a police officer at the time, and he said, when you were a school resource officer and you were in the schools and, with the kids, you were so happy. And it looks like this job description was written for you. And he really encouraged me to apply, and it was the best decision I ever made. I have an incredibly supportive school board and superintendent. I work for a wonderful school district. I love being in and out of the buildings, engaging with staff and students. I am a great problem solver, and I love what I do every day, and I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunity to work with District 95 and with incredible organizations like ZeroNow and NCSSD, NCS4. I'm just really grateful for all of you and all the school safety directors that are working hard for kids every day.
Yeah, and thank you as well, Danielle, for all that you do and you contribute your knowledge to others. And on that note, we are wrapping up. Just to remind folks to speaking of school safety directors, visit schoolsecurityleadership.org, the new publication. And so next Tuesday, a week from today, we're holding a special conversation about the COPS SVPP program, the grants that are coming out. We've got three folks with different perspectives on this. So we're going to explore some of the approaches and strategies to apply for winning grant. There are a lot of some new factors in there that we need to explore. But thank you all for participating today. This is our last program. We'll see you again in August. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Randy. Thanks, Solveig. We appreciate all of your expertise and knowledge. And thank you for all for attending today. Thank you so much. Take care.